right, we are going to talk about deferrals and accruals, which you already know how to do, don't you? Synonym for left. Debit, synonym for right. Credit, what are the three accounts on the balance sheet? Assets, liabilities, equity. Which side do you put the assets on? Left, therefore how do you increase them? Debit, how do you reduce them? Credit, which ones do you put on the right? Liabilities and equity, how do you increase them therefore? Credit, how do you reduce them? Debit. Revenue and expenses go on the income statement, right guys? They are a subset of equity, aren't they? So how do you increase revenues? Seeing as they increase equity. Credit, how do you reduce them? Debit. Okay? If you haven't wanted to correct the account. Expenses, how do you increase them? Debit, how do you reduce them? Credit. There's nobody that doesn't know that. How can you use it? What does that with you? Because you can't take something you have memorized and use it. When you go to work, does your boss care if you can remember things? Seeing as we have computers. They're not going to ask you. They can look it up on Wikipedia, right? I'm only half kidding, right? Wikipedia is not bad, by the way. You find all sorts of references to get you started on Wikipedia. You don't believe it, you go to the references. And you certainly don't quote it, okay? Please don't do that in any of your classes and say, oh, Richardson said Wikipedia is not too bad, so I just quoted that from my Wayne newspaper. There's an F coming, right? Okay, so do some real research. But it's okay, you know, you can look stuff up. My point is, can we find things really fast instead of remembering them? Yes, and that doesn't mean you don't need to remember stuff, but you're going to feel like you're remembering it, you're going to know it. You guys don't remember that debit means left anymore, do you? You know that, right? You know it. It just does. Okay, anyway. So let's do deferrals and accruals. Let's think about revenues, seeing as we've got revenues, and we are either going to defer or accrue revenues, or they're going to be a cash revenue. Those are the possibilities, okay? And then we've got expenses, and we are either going to defer or accrue expenses, or they're going to be cash expenses. Okay, let's think about revenues. Can I earn the revenue and get paid in the same period? Of course. Right? I could earn it and get paid in the same period, couldn't I? But what else could happen with revenues? I could get paid before I earn it. They would prepay it. Right? You guys have all read chapter 4, right? Everybody have read chapter 4 and absorbed it and tried to do some homework. Well, maybe not. Good idea to get going, though. Okay, good idea to get going. Right? When do we have any quiz in chapter 4? It's not really on 4, it's on 1 through 4. Yeah, right. What's today? Monday. Oh, we got all kinds of time. And the answer is, yes, we do have all kinds of time. But let's go. Let's go. Let's go. You should have already been working on that, right? Thinking about it. Particularly if you didn't do very well on this, right? You'd want to bear down and go after it, wouldn't you? Okay? What's the natural human tendency instead? Back off, procrastinate. Take it easy. True? It is. What does that do for you? It makes Friday hell. Right? That's what it does. Okay? And it sort of solidifies that you're going to drop. If you're in that group now. Right? What do you do if you have an F after 3 quizzes? Well, for God's sake, fail. Right? You guys, what was it, 12 between the two classes? Those 12 people need a fantastic quiz, or they need to run like hell. Okay? It's okay. It's all right. It's only 12 out of 72. Shoot, that's nothing yet. So, not even 20% yet. Yeah, terrible. Okay, terrible. Don't let it happen to you. Why pay your money and put your time in and not get it? Okay, so that's true of revenues, huh? We could get paid cash now. We could get paid in advance. We could have to handle getting paid in advance. What's the other possibility if they're going to pay us? For now, we'll assume they're going to pay us. They're going to pay us later, right? Okay? So here's the deal. If they pay me in advance, I'm going to defer recognizing the revenue until I earn it, because I don't want revenue on my income statement until I earn it. So if they pay me in advance, they gave me cash, and I gave them my what? My promise to do the work later, which is a liability, isn't it? I owe them the work. And we're going to call that cleverly, what is it? Unearned revenue. Yeah. You know, revenue I haven't earned yet, we call it unearned revenue. How do I name things? Tough, huh? Right? It's unearned revenue, or deferred revenue, some people call it, because we deferred recognition of revenue. Okay, now that brings us to, what does recognition mean, you guys? I recognize somebody, right? I see them, I know them, right? Okay, I recognize. What recognition means is put it on the financial statements. recorded, in other words. Make the journal entry crediting revenue in this case, is recognizing the revenue. We separate that from realization. What does realization mean? I realize the cash I got paid. Realization is separate from recognition. If you get paid at the same time that you earn it, they're together, right? You recognize the revenue in your income statement, you realize the cash, so you recognize that on your balance sheet, Put the cash on the balance sheet. Recognize means just report it, okay? That's it. Put it on the statements. Okay, but what if you get paid and you haven't earned it yet? You still have realized the cash, you've got to put it on your balance sheet. But we're not going to recognize the revenue until we earn it in some later period. So we'll defer recognition, put off recognition. We're not deferring the cash, you guys, right? We're deferring the revenue until we earn it. Okay, now let's think about the other possibility. They could do the work, or we could do the work for them now, right, and earn the revenues now, but not get paid until later. Because I earned the revenue, what do I need to do? Record it on the income statement. I earned it. Credit revenue, I'm going to recognize it, in other words, right? But I can't record cash coming in because it didn't come in. You can't debit cash. What are you going to have to debit? We already did this stuff. I did the work for them. They're going to pay me later. What do I call that? It's an account receivable, isn't it? I am going to accrue the revenue by recording that receivable. Debit accounts receivable and credit service revenue, say. You know what? Once you can do it for revenues, you can do it for expenses because they're just the mirror image. What's the deal with expenses? Can you have an expense? Do you have an employee work for you and pay them in the same month that they do the work? Debit wage expense, right? Or salary expense and credit cash, right? Could you pay them later? Yeah. Debit wage expense or salary expense and credit what? I'm going to pay them later, guys. Payable sometimes. Wages payable or salaries payable, right? You already know how to do this stuff. We're just naming it here. Okay? It's no big deal. Okay? Could I pay them in advance, though? Oh, yeah. I credit cash, and I gave them cash. What did they give me? They're promised to do the work later for me, right? So what do I have? Let's say that I paid him for a year in advance. You're going to be my gardener, okay? I'm going to do a gardening thing here. I'd like to be a gardener. Doesn't pay well. I'd like it. Also, I have a brown thumb. Everything I touch dies, so that probably wouldn't work. But here's the deal. I'm going to pay him his $100,000 to be my gardener in advance. He received the cash. He owes me the work, right? That's true. But what do I have? I gave up the cash and I got what? Gardening done for me for a year at a really high level for $100,000, right? Really nice gardening done for what? A full year. Do you think I'd have an asset? What if my wife and I are independently wealthy? A lot. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to rent a place downtown for you, $2,000 a month rent. We're going to pay $24,000 for a really nice apartment. You got a view of the river and everything, view of the city on the other side of your nice apartment. $2,000 a month, okay? And we'll pay the whole year in advance for you. Do you think you'd have an asset if you could live in that for a year and not have to pay rent? I think so. We don't have the 24 grand anyway. We'd have parties. Okay, anyway, yeah, so it's not going to happen, but do you think you'd have an asset? Of course. So if you pay your rent in advance in your building, do you have an asset? Sure, you get to use it rent-free. Everybody agree? Okay, so that's all we're doing here, you guys. It's just not a big deal. So let's do some entries. Let's do gardener, okay? So who might be a gardener? XYZ Gardening? Anybody know the name of a gardening company? Have a family member or something? No? You don't like landscaping or something? Okay, that's gardening. Okay, XYZ Gardening, that's the name of the company. Okay, and then let's, on the expense side, let's be Yum Brands. And they do the gardening for Yum Brands. I don't know if Yum Brands has their own employees or if they have somebody do it for them on a contract basis. I bet they have somebody on a contract basis. It's cheaper because they pay horrible wages. Yum Brands doesn't want to do, well, they pay horrible wages too, right? Yum Brands? Fast food places. Yeah, they're awful. Yeah, okay. So I take it back. Yum Brands doesn't mind paying horrible wages. Okay, anyway, they do. Let's not criticize Yum Brands. They're a Louisville company. Let's criticize McDonald's instead, right? They're the bad ones. Yum Brands is good. Okay, anyway, whatever. So, all right. So why would Yum Brands have gardening done, by the way? Why would they have their grounds landscaped, lawn mowed, all that stuff? Why would they do it? They're incurring a cost here, which is going to be an expense, right? Why are they incurring this expense? Why is it an expense? To keep their lawns mowed. They have beautiful grounds. You ever seen their location over here? Right? Beautiful. Really nice. Keep it up really nice. Why would they spend money on that? Make it look good. Why? More appealing to people. Why? They want what? It helps generate revenues. Absolutely. Okay, let's use a doctor's office instead. How about if you went to the doctor's office and they didn't hire janitorial staff and they had never cleaned up the office? Cobwebs growing everywhere, dust this thick on the floor, papers everywhere, trash cans overflowing, right? I mean, years and years they just didn't do anything. Well, they don't have trash cans, they just throw stuff on the floor. What the heck? Would you ever make it back into an examination room? Or would you stay up? Okay, how about if their grass was 3 feet tall outside? Would you even make it in the door? No. Why do people do this? To generate revenues. They don't care. Well, they might. They'd have to work there, right? But you know what? Lots of the owners don't even work there. But do they care? Oh, yeah, they care. They might care because of aesthetics, but they also care because of revenues they're going to generate, right? So why do we incur this cost? To generate revenue, so therefore this cost is a expense. All the costs we incur to generate revenues are expenses, right? Why does a gardener do gardening? I hope they love doing gardening, right? Because they're doing it for a living. But what's the primary purpose they've got here for doing the gardening? They want to generate revenues so that they have more income. Become wealthy, right? That's their make a living. Okay, right, guys? We should become wealthy. Okay, anyway, good. So let's handle all three of these. Let's say it's $1,000. So XYZ Gardening is earning it. This is going to be easy. You know what? For the folks who have been really working in here, this is going to be easy. If you haven't been working in here, you can make it easy for yourself by working. And it'll work out just fine. Let's say it's gardening for the month of May, right? So the grass is growing. Okay, what they do is they mow the lawns for $1,000. Okay, fine. All right. So let's say it is now May 31st, and XYZ Gardening has mown the lawns, and they go up to the office at Young Brands, and they say, I mowed the lawn, please give me my $1,000, and of course they write them a check instantly and hand it to them. Business does not work this way. They think they were nuts. They came up to the office and said, please give me the $1,000, right? You know, it doesn't work that way. You have to send them an invoice, right? Send them a bill, and they'll pay you later. Or you might insist they pay you in advance, but I doubt if the gardening company can insist Young pay them in advance, right? Who's got more clout here? Do you guys ever pay anybody in advance? You bet. The insurance company. Who's more powerful? You or the insurance company? The insurance company. Plus, if you have car insurance and you don't get in a wreck at the end of the year, now you owe it. How do you feel about having to pay it? They'd have more bad debts if they didn't collect in advance, wouldn't it? Right? It's why McDonald's doesn't give you credit. When you go in, you need the fat fix, right? So you buy the McDonald's hamburger. After you eat it, you're ill. You want to pay for it then? No, you're willing to pay for it in advance. Would you pay for it later? Probably not. Okay? So they don't grant you credit on that stuff they serve. Okay, anyway. All right. Have you guys ever seen a full meal at McDonald's put in a blender and blend it and then see what happens to it when it settles out? Did you ever do that in grade school or high school? It's hilarious. It's like 70% fat or something, so all the liquid rises and this glob of, oh yeah, it's wonderful stuff. Okay, anyway. It's not as bad as Coca-Cola where you take the tubes and put it in it, right? And it dissolves it over time. You ever seen that one? That's really fun. Yeah, okay, yeah, you have. Okay, fun little stuff. Okay, anyway, on May 31st, you know, Young Brands pays for it because they used it up. What do you want to credit if they paid for it? Come on, what do you want to credit if they paid for it? An asset name. Cash. Yeah. Cash $1,000. What do you want to debit, seeing as they used it up? A what? Expense. Named what, guys? How about lawn mowing expense? You like that? Gardening expense. I don't care. Whatever they want to call it. Okay? Lawn mowing expense. Okay? Landscaping expense. It wouldn't be that. I guess it'd be gardening expense, maybe. Okay, got the idea? Isn't that what Young Brands would do? I know you know how to handle cash transaction. That is cash now. Okay? What would happen to the gardening company if it's cash now? On May 31st, they hand them the bill and they get paid because they did the gardening. What they get? Cash, and they earned revenue. How do you record the cash? It's an asset. They have more. What do you do? Debit it. We are learning nothing new today, you guys. We're just talking about it differently. What's the credit? $1,000. Revenue. Let's call it lawn mowing revenue. You like it? Or gardening revenue, or whatever they want, right? But some kind of revenue, some sort of service revenue. Okay, so we'll call it lawn mowing revenue. Why not? I'll tell you what. Every time I receive cash, I debit cash. Every time I pay out cash, I credit cash. Don't you? Every time I earn revenue, I credit revenue. Don't you? Every time I have an expense, I debit expense, right? When it happens doesn't matter. It's what's happening. Okay? That's it. Okay? So you just figure out what happened and record it. So let's go one step further. Let's do cash later. That one's easier for people to handle usually. Cash later. Okay? All right? So let's go ahead and do Yum Brands first. Yum Brands had the lawn mowing done. They mowed the lawn. Oh, by the way, as soon as you mow the lawn, what starts happening to the grass? Starts growing again. Do you agree that you used up the lawn mowing? Seeing as it's going to have to be done again. Is that different than buying a piece of equipment that's going to last for 10 years? Yeah, you don't use it up instantly. So it's not equipment expense, is it? It's equipment, which is an asset. And then as you use it up, we depreciate it. Okay? It's depreciation expense. That's it. Okay? Makes sense? Same with the building. But with lawn mowing, gee, you mowed the grass, it starts growing again. With janitorial services, you used it up. With all your employees, right? You don't own them. You don't own their time. What's the deal, everybody? As soon as they do the work, you used it up, haven't you? Right? Now, I know you might get some future benefit out of ad campaigns and stuff, but we don't know when the benefit's going to come, so to be conservative, as we're going to read about in Chapter 5, we go ahead and expense, right? So we incur the costs, and we'll talk about those things, okay? So the theory gets a little more complex, but the accounting doesn't. The debits and credits stay simple. All right, so here we go. It's going to be cash later. Let's do what Yum Brands would do. So it's May 31st. They've had the lawn mowing done, and let's say it's due June 10th, okay? They're going to pay the bill June 10th. What would they do on May 31st? They'd have an account payable, wouldn't they? And why do they have an account payable? Because they had the lawn mowed and they used it up and now they owe them, right? So they have an account payable, or lawn mowing payable, if they want to call it that. Probably accounts payable. Okay, so how would you record an account payable if you want to do that first? Credit. Accounts payable is a liability, so we credit it to increase it. Yeah. Okay, so they would have accounts payable. Whoops. Thank you. Accounts payable for $1,000, right? Sound good? And what would you debit for $1,000? What do they have? What do they have when they mow the lawns and they paid at the same time? They had lawn mowing expense. Guess what they have when they mow the lawns and pay later? Lawn mowing expense. It's lawn mowing expense, you guys. Whatever the expense is called. It doesn't matter when you pay it. It's what it is. You used it up, right? If it was salary expense, rent expense, whatever it is, interest expense, right? It doesn't matter if you paid it or not. It matters if you used it up. Got it? Okay. So then what would they do when they pay it on June 10th? Guess what they pay it with? Cash. So wouldn't you credit cash? Of course you would. And what would you debit, everybody? Accounts payable because you don't owe it anymore, right? How do you reduce liabilities? All of them. Debits. Yeah. We're still using this debit and credit stuff, right? And those 5 kinds of accounts. That's all there is. Okay? Fantastic. Okay? Should notice something. This credit to accounts payable less this debit to accounts payable zeroes out to nothing, doesn't it? Right? Of course. I borrowed the money and then I repaid it. Right? I'm done. Okay? So all that's left is debit lawn mowing expense and credit cash, which is exactly the same as this because that's exactly what happened. So why do I bother with making that entry at May 31st? I'm going to do a financial statement at May 31st, balance sheet and income statement. I want the expense on my income statement, right? I don't want to show cash going out that hasn't gone out yet on my balance sheet. Instead, I show an account payable on my balance sheet. Got it? Then the next month, I don't have the payable anymore, so I debit it. And I don't have the cash anymore, so I credit it. I'm just trying to reflect what happened. Yes, sir? That was it. Okay, good. All right. So let's do the revenue side. What would it be at May 31st? Let's see. I'm the gardener. I'm the gardening company. I did the gardening. What do I have because I did the gardening? I have, well, not unearned revenue. I did the gardening. What do I have? I have earned revenue. I have service revenue. I earned it, right? Whether they paid me or not, assuming they are going to pay me, right? We'll get to that later. Assuming they're going to pay me. If they're not going to pay me, I gave it to them. Right? It's a gift. Unintentional, maybe. We'll call it a bad debt expense later. Okay? But what happened? I did the gardening, and that's how I earn revenues. I earn the revenue by doing the gardening, assuming they're going to pay me, right? What else do I have? They're going to pay me in the future instead of now. What do I have? An account receivable. I probably wouldn't have them sign a note. You think this gardener's going to make Young Brand sign a note for $1,000? I didn't trust them. Right? Okay, so it'll be an open account, probably. Okay, but they could sign a note. You can do it that way. Okay, if you're doing business with a real small company and you don't trust them quite as much, you might have them sign a note, or you might have them pay you in advance. Got the idea? These are business decisions, right? You guys are going to be making business decisions. That's the whole idea here. Okay, that's why we're doing this. Okay, so what do I want to record because I did the work? How about lawn mowing revenue, huh? Let's credit lawn mowing revenue. You guys like that? Simple, isn't it? It really is. Get your head around this. It's just not a big deal. Don't try to memorize it. Is it getting too big to memorize? It was too big to memorize in the last quiz, wasn't it? Just blew you away. Some of you, I've had lots and lots of students over the years. I do every single semester who say, I have a big memory, I can remember it. Not those words, but close. I'm like, God, I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's like saying you can memorize the English language. You do not have it memorized, you guys. You know it. You understand. Which words do you misspell? The ones that follow the rules or the ones that don't? You know the rules, don't you? I before E, except after C, right? My name is misspelled. K-E-I-T-H, it is misspelled. And you know what? Some people spell it right. Their parents put down K-I-E-T-H on their birth certificates. Mine's spelled wrong, according to the rules, huh? Lots of words are spelled wrong according to the rules, aren't they? Okay? So you have to memorize all that crap, which I've forgotten all of it. Thank goodness for spell check, huh? Right? Although spell check will tell you you're right, no matter how you spell there, right? How many ways are there? At least 3. I can think of off the top of my head. It'll tell you they're all right. Lovely. Okay, anyway, you know you're using the wrong one. All right, what do you want debit here? Then a credit lawn mowing revenue, they didn't pay you, what do you have? An account receivable, which is what kind of an account? That's an asset, right guys? That's an asset, isn't it? Okay, then what are you going to do? I got an asset and I earned the revenue, okay? They owe me. On June 10th, what happens to them? Gee, Young Brands paid them, so what do they get? Cash, which is a asset, so what do you do to it? Debit it. This is easy. What don't they have anymore? They don't have revenue again, you guys, right? The account receivable goes away, right? Because it doesn't exist anymore if they paid you, right? You don't have that asset, instead you have cash. Cash is a different asset, right? You got an asset for an asset. Everybody agree? Can we exchange assets for assets? Sure. Can we exchange assets for liability? Sure. Assets for equity? Sure. Assets for revenue? Assets for expense? You bet. Can we exchange liability for all those two? Equity for all those two? Getting the idea? You can exchange anything for anything. Okay? It's all right. Just figure out what happened. Make your entries. Notice, accounts receivable, debit and then credit for exactly the same amount. That just cancels out, doesn't it? What's left? Debit cash and credit revenue, which was debit cash and credit revenue. Sure, that's what happened. Why do we bother with this again? Same question, right? Why do we bother? Because at May 31st, I want to do a financial statement, don't I? I want to show the revenue was earned in May, but I don't want to show the cash coming in. I want to show the receivable on my balance sheet. I want to tell people the truth to the extent I can in my financial statements, huh? And then what happens in June? The receivable goes away, and now I have the cash. I don't have any more revenue in June. Yeah.
So at the end of May, that's your total asset, but not your current asset.
Well, accounts receivable would be part of my current assets. I might have 10,000 customers, right? And I'd add up all the receivables from all of them, call that accounts receivable. You bet. Okay? So then when they pay me, my account receivable goes down. When they buy more from me, it goes up. And whatever the balance is at the end of the month is what I'll put on my financial statement.
When isn't it current?
When is it? Oh, when would an account receivable not be current? They are going to pay me when? Next year. If it's going to take more than a year to get paid, it's a non-current asset, even though it's an account receivable. That's a great question. Could inventory not be current? Yeah, if I'm not going to sell it within a year. What is it typically, though? Current, right? How many companies intentionally keep inventory for more than a year? No, not, usually not, okay? Same with receivables. But notes receivable, You might have a current portion, right? They're due within a year, and a non-current portion, they're due in more than a year, which is why they signed a note, and they're going to pay you interest. With the note, you get interest. With accounts receivable, you don't. It makes sense? Okay, all right. Why don't we get interest on accounts receivable? Because we're just giving them a few days to pay us, right, typically. 10 days to 30 days, maybe. Okay? Good. Excellent. That's a great question. All right, so what's left, you guys? We did cash now, we did cash later. And by the way, when we're done doing this, we've got everything there is. Everything. We got it made, okay? Cash before. Cash in advance or before, okay? So cash before, cash in advance. I get the cash before I earned it, if it's revenue, right? And I pay the cash before I incurred the expense, if it's expense. So let's do cash before. And we've got them all, you guys. You know, this happens to be for gardening, but could it be for salary? Sure. Could it be for rent? Sure. Could it be for insurance? Could it be for interest? Could it be for virtually anything that you have a type of revenue? Any type of revenue? Sure. Could it be for any type of expense? Of course. One company's revenue is another company's expense, right? Of course. That makes sense? So it could be anything. Just change the names, huh? Instead of putting lawn mowing revenue in there, put legal fee revenue. Got it? Put rent revenue. Put interest revenue. Same with the expense side. Once you know how to do this, you got it made. Okay? You got it made, honest. So get this down. Okay. So cash before would be, I guess, in April sometime. So let's say April 28th, they paid us for work we're going to do in May. Got the idea? Okay? So April 28th, Young Brands pays XYZ Gardening, right, for the work, and then they have the gardening done in May. Very nice of Young Brands to do this. Maybe it's a new gardening company, and they can't pay their employees unless they get paid in advance, and they want to help them out. I don't know. Okay, that's not bad. All right, so, but it happens, of course. People can get paid in advance, too. The insurance companies, we know about that. Okay, so what would happen to Young Brands? They paid them. What did they pay them with? Cash, which is a asset, and we have less. What do you want to do? Credit it. I credited cash there when I paid it out. I credit cash there when I paid it out. I think I'll still credit cash here when I pay it out. Sound good? Okay, and what do you want to debit, everybody? Prepaid. Yeah, it's a prepaid. I'm not going to have gardening expense yet or lawn mowing expense yet, am I? Because they didn't mow the lawns. I have the right to have the lawns mowed later, which is a asset. And I paid in advance, so a clever name for something I prepaid is prepaid. You like it? Okay, so we call this prepaid, whatever it is, lawn mowing, I guess, prepaid gardening, prepaid rent, prepaid interest, whatever it is, huh? It's prepaid. That's an asset. Okay? Debit lawn mowing, prepaid lawn mowing, and credit cash. What do we do then when we have the lawns mowed? What do we have because we had the lawns mowed? An expense. Named. How about lawn mowing expenses that we called it the other times? Why make up new names? Let's just call it the same thing. You guys drive me crazy when you make up new names for things that you already had. Actually, they're kind of humorous sometimes. Because people try to get really creative to name it something else. You don't have to do that. That's what it is. Debit lawn mowing expense. How much? 1,000. And what do you want to credit? What don't you have anymore? I'm not paying them again. It's not credit cash. I'm not paying them later. It's not credit accounts payable. What is it? Prepaid expense. I used up that prepaid. It's gone. Yeah, got it. The prepaid expense. And we call them prepaid expenses. You put the word prepaid in front, it's an asset, okay? It's not an expense. But you don't even have to put the word expense on it. It can just be prepaid lawn mowing. It's fine, okay? You know what that is. Okay? $1,000. And look what happened. This one, right? And this one canceled, and right? And what's left? Debit lawn mowing expense, credit cash, because that's what happened, right? Wow, it's the same no matter what. Well, of course. They had the lawns mowed, they paid for it. It just happens to be in different months. What happens, though, at the end of April on the April financial statement? Now, Young Brands has 1,000 more cash, and right? No, 1,000 less cash, and 1,000 more prepaid. That's all. If you're looking at the balance sheet, let's make it 100 million. Would you rather your company had cash or a prepaid? I like cash better. Why? I can spend it, right? So it's still important information, right? Probably for $1,000, nobody cares. It's immaterial for Young Brands. They drop the last 6 digits off of their financial statements. I don't think they care about $1,000, right? So, yeah. They measure things in billions. Okay? Big company. All right, anyway, so let's do the other side. What's the revenue side? What happened to the gardening company? They got cash debited, right? And when are you going to credit? They have not earned it yet. So this is a new term. How many of you guys get paid in advance so you have unearned revenue in your life? You know, I've actually had that happen to me when I worked in public accounting. I'd have clients every once in a while that did not pay us, and guess what we'd do? If they wanted them to do more work for us and they went into a bankruptcy situation, they weren't able to pay us, and now they'd like us to help them with the bankruptcy, what do we insist on? Give me the money up front. Just shock them. And so they rip us off for $10,000. Well, they're unable to pay us. Bankruptcy court's not going to give it to us, and we know it, right? Okay. And they got behind on paying us, and we let them. So we're going to lose it, right? Now they want us to do some work for us. What do we want? 20 grand cash in advance. And when we get done with that, I want another 20 grand. So you get paid in advance sometimes, right? And they would, of course, because we knew a lot about their company. All right. Okay. So anyway. So what happens if they pay you in advance? What do you have? Let's see. You have the obligation to do the work. Does XYZ Gardening have the obligation to mow the lawns and not get paid for it now? Seeing as they've already been paid. Of course. So what would that be for them? A what? A what, you guys? There are assets, liabilities, equity, revenue, and expense. What is this if they owe them the work? Liability. Are they going to satisfy this one by paying them cash? Of course not. They're not getting the money back. They're going to mow the lawn. So you can satisfy liabilities by giving them an asset, right? Or doing the work. Got it? Okay, give them the goods or services. You could actually give them product if they paid for product in advance too, right? Barbie dolls or something. Okay? Whatever. Toys. All right. So what do we want to do with this? Credit what? An account named unearned revenue. And I'd probably call it unearned lawn mowing revenue because that's what it is. You like that idea? That says unearned on us. Okay, anyway. Unearned lawn mowing revenue. Like it? You got to know what? That is what kind of an account? Liability. So therefore we're increasing it with a credit. What did I tell you guys? Every time you hear a new term, new name of an account, what do you want to immediately ask yourself? What is it? What are the possibilities? There are 5, right? Asset, liability, equity, revenue, expense. And as soon as you know how to account for it. You got a name, right? How many different accounts are there? How many different assets are there in the world? Different types of assets. You got an account for each of them. How many different liabilities are there? All the people in the world, all the business in the world, and the number of ways to borrow from all. Come on. All kinds of them. You count for them all the same way, though, right, guys? So same with revenues and expenses. All right, so then what's going to happen at May 31st? We mowed the lawns. What do we have because we mowed the lawns? Revenue. We have lawn mowing revenue here when we mow the lawns. We have lawn mowing revenue here when we mow the lawns. Guess what we have here when we mow the lawns? We have lawn mowing revenue. Okay, now they're not going to pay me again, so I don't get cash. They're not going to pay me later. I don't have an account receivable. What do? I'm going to debit the unearned revenue, getting rid of it. That's it. Unearned. Actually, reading that a little bit. Lawn mowing revenue. That's a debit. Okay? $1,000. Debit. Everybody got it? Now look at that. That unearned revenue cancels out, doesn't it? And what do we have left? Debit cash and credit lawn mowing revenue. Okay? One more thing. And I'll actually let you leave on time today, maybe. Inconceivable, I know. All right. There was a lot today, huh? If you knew all of this, you will nail the next quiz. That's all it is. Okay? That's all it is. Okay? Real. Not much else. Okay, one more thing. Tell me which one's a cash transaction. Ridiculous, right? Cash now is a cash transaction, right? Which one's an accrual transaction? Accrual of revenue and accrual of expense. What does accrual mean? I am recording the revenue or expense, accruing it, speeding it up, right? I am recording it before I receive the cash or paid out the cash. Which one's the accrual, you guys? Cash later. You had a 50-50 shot. I heard some before's out there. That's annoying, isn't it? Okay, anyway, yeah. Cash later, I'm accruing this revenue even though I didn't get paid yet, right? Okay? And I'm accruing this expense even though I didn't get paid yet. Got the idea? These are accruals, these two. Okay? Let's write it down. Okay? So certainly, these are cash transactions, right? This cash later is accrual. And people use these terms. It's not a real big deal. For our class, later it's a bigger deal, right? If you go into 211, accounting 211 or something. A lot of you are thinking, I'd never be that insane. Take another class from Richardson. Okay, anyway, but it pays off big time, though. Right? You guys did hear Steve Case kind of. Okay, yeah. Why does this profession pay well? Because it's a profession. It's hard. Things that pay well are usually hard. Except for social work's really hard, and teaching grade school kids is really hard, and we don't pay for that. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, the ones that pay well typically are hard, though. All right, I think being an NFL player probably. Okay, these are accruals, aren't they? Because I am accruing the expense, I'm accruing the revenue before I get paid. Guess which ones are the deferrals? These are. Okay, what do I mean by deferral? 2 R's in that. What do I mean by deferral? I am deferring it till later. You like that? I am getting the cash now, but I'm going to record the revenue later because I haven't earned it yet. Got it? I'm deferring the revenue. I paid out the cash, but I'm not going to record the expense until later. I deferred the expense. See you guys later. Take it easy. Enjoy your sprint over to Oregon, where you're going. Good stuff, huh? All on one page. I'll be quiet. Can't read a word of it. See you guys. Hang in there. Keep your heads up and work.